Hi lovelies! This is the cutting and sewing tutorial of this Barbie inspired dress. You can check out the pattern drafting tutorial in the description box. So let's go into the cutting and sewing process. So for this particular project, I'll be making use of crepe fabric for the body and then scuba for the bow tie. In the other video that I did, I used scuba material, but I couldn't find scuba material available for this particular project. So I am going to be using thick crepe. So let's go into the cotton. So you have to check the stretchy part of the fabric, but if you're not using a stretchy fabric, you can go ahead and fold your fabric. So I'm going to fold my fabric and place on top of the cutting table. So after that, I'm going to start marking the down parts. I want to cut out the down part first. So to cut out the down part, I'm going to remove the upper borders. That is the half length, and my waist half length, my front waist half length is 16. So I'm going to remove 16 to get the full length. So you get your full length, then you add your folding allowance, the folding allowance. You can go ahead to add 2 inches or 1 inch folding allowance. So I'll cut. You can go ahead and cut more fabrics. I had to cut more and I joined them together. I used about 5 yards in total length. You can use more fabrics, like up to 6 yards in length if you have enough fabric, to give more fullness to the skirt. So depending on the fullness that you want to achieve for the skirt, that's the down part. After cutting the down part, you need to fold the remaining fabric. Place it on fold so that you can add your front borders. Then for you place the front borders, the middle part must be on fold. Then you have to use your pin and hold them down like so. You have to secure them properly before you start adding the allowances. So to add your seam allowance, you need to draw out your lines. Draw out your lines. Draw out the lines. All the straight lines. Draw them out. So here I'll add half inch for the joining. I'll add half for the joining. So as you carefully add the half inch joining seam allowance, you can use a straight ruler to connect the straight parts so that you minimize using freehand. You have to carefully add the allowances because you don't want to have more or less than the half inch that you intend to add. So I'm going to add the side like so. Then I'll also add half inch up here that I'll use to join it to the lining. Then but for the side seam allowance, I'm going to add 1.5 side seam allowance. You can add 2 depending on however you want it to be. I added 1.5 inches side seam allowance. So after that, I'm going to start cutting. As you are cutting, make sure that you maintain the chalk line. Cut or exactly on the chalk line. Then for the back, I'm going to use this fabric for the back as I do not have enough fabric. So I'm going to use this fabric that I want to use for the bow tie to cut out the back. So after that, I'm going to start adding the allowances. You draw your lines. So for the side back, I'm going to have 1.5 side seam allowance for the side because that is what I added for the front borders. So I'm going to come down by half for the joining seam allowance. Then up to, I'm going to mark ½ inch at the upside that I'll use to join it with the lining. I'll use to turn it with the lining. Then for the zipper, I'm going to add 0.75 zipper allowance. You can decide to add one or more depending on how you add your zipper allowance, but for me, I prefer 0.75 zipper allowance. So we are going to cut. So you notch your zipper and notch where you start fixing your strap from. So I'll go ahead to also cut the strap. Pin the strap pattern on your fabric and start adding ½ inch seam allowance all round the strap pattern like so. After that, you cut it out. So you can go ahead and indicate your front armhole side so that it will serve as a guide. Then you need to cut more as a lining for the strap. So therefore it's going to be like 4 pieces, 2 pieces for the strap and then 2 pieces for the lining of the strap. Notch the front. That will be a guide when sewing, so you know where to fix the front and the back. Then you need to cut the lining. I'm using a pink fabric as lining. So place your all that you have cut out on the lining and start cutting out exactly the same way that you have cut out your fabric. The lining has to be the same size with your fabric. I went ahead to cut the lining for the back as well. Just place your fabric on top of your lining and cut exactly the same size as the fabric, as the main fabric. So after cutting, this is what you're going to have. I've gone ahead to cut the lining. This is the front borders and the lining and the straps. The strap is going to be 4 pieces because I'm going to turn each one over. That means I also cut out the lining for the strap. And this is the back. I've also cut out the lining for the back. So we go into the sewing process. So after cutting your fabric, the next thing to do is to go ahead and mark that allowances that you have added. 1.5 for the side and ½ inch on the other sides. Then you're going to pin it. This is the right side, this is the wrong side. I marked my chalk on the wrong side, so you're going to pin them together like so. I'm trying to maintain the underbust. Pin them together like so. Then I'm going to go over to the machine now and join it together. Make sure that they are equal when joining. So I'm going to go to the machine now and join. So this is the back too. I've also marked out my zipper allowance, the 1.5 inches that I added for the side. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side now and connect so that it will be easier for you. The sewing will be easy for you. The essence of pattern drafting is to get a good fit at the end of your sewing. So you make sure that you maintain whatever that you added. So this is it. So let's go to the machine now. Let's go over to the machine. On the lining too, you have to also mark it. I've not marked out my lining, so I'm going to do that off camera. Mark it down and do the exact same thing that I have done on the main fabric. Let's go. After joining the darts, this is what you're going to have. So you should go ahead and slash it and open press. After pressing, this is what you're going to have. Go ahead and do the same thing for the lining. Join the darts and open press. And you're going to have something like this. Then you need to get the tiny strap and turn it as well. Turn it with the half inch that you have added and press as well. Then I went ahead to install the strap to the borders. You remember that notch that we indicated as a guide? I need to pin it down to the front borders like so. Then after pinning, you need to carry your lining and cover the front borders. Use that half inch that you added as the joining allowance to the lining and join both of them together like you see in the video. Then go ahead and slash the allowance, a half inch allowance, so that when you turn it over to the right side, it's going to lay flat. Then I went ahead to also trim out the excesses at the bustier area so that it can be able to be smooth and neat when I flip it to the right side. I added boning for more structure. You can add as many boning channels as you desire. So you mark out 0.75 so that the boning does not touch the half inch allowance that you have added, because you don't want to sew on top of the boning. Then go ahead to use lighter to smoothen the edges of the boning because you don't want it to be choking. Then you top stitch on your boning. Then after adding your boning, you flip to the right side. This is what you're going to have. You can keep it aside and go over to the back. Then you need to iron interfacing to your zipper area of the back so that it remains firm. I use paper gum stay as the interfacing. You can use any interfacing of your choice. Then go ahead and install the zipper. After installing your zipper, this is what it looks like. You open up your zipper and get that front borders that you have turned with the lining and pin the strap down like so that you can be able to turn the back with the lining to have a neat finishing as well. Go ahead and pin the lining of the back borders and join the lining to the borders together with the half inch that you added initially like so. You do the same thing for the other side of the back as well. Once you're done, you have to flip it to the right side and turn and smoothen it out because you are going to go over to the ironing board and give it a good press. So this is what it looks like. So the next thing to do is to give it a good press. After ironing, this is what it looks like. Can you see how neat and smooth the front with the lining and the back as well? So you go ahead to pin them together, pin the fabric to fabric together, the main fabric to main fabric together, like so. You pin them together, make sure they are equal by the side so that you can join the side seam. After pinning, you can go ahead and remark the 1.5 side seam allowance that you added. You can remark it so that it can be clear for you to run your straight stitch on top of it. Also mark on your lining. Then go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Pin them down, make sure that they are equal so that you can run a straight stitch to join them together. Then go ahead and run a straight stitch on the marking on the line that you have marked. Stitch for the both sides. After stitching, you open it up. This is what you're going to have. So you go over to the ironing table and give it a good press. So after I am done ironing, in the inside, I have open pressed the allowance. I open press the allowance. Then I will measure the waist measurement. I will note down the waist measurement of the down part because that is what I'm going to use to get my pleats. Then to get the down part, which is the skirt, you need to get the fabric that you have cut out and indicate the midpoint of that fabric. You can give it a notch or use chalk to indicate the midpoint. It is very important to indicate the midpoint because you are going to be joining the midpoint of the skirt to the midpoint of the bodice. So once you are done, you are going to start pleating. So you measure out your zipper allowance. I'm going to trim out this place, so I'm not including it. You measure out your zipper allowance and you start pleating. Depending on the kind of pleats you want to go for. If you want a tiny pleat, you can go for a tiny pleat. If you want a bold pleat, you can go for bold pleat. So I'm going for a small pleat. Can you see how I'm pleating it? You keep on going. Keep pushing and pleating until you get close to the end. Make sure you leave out your zipper allowance as well on the other side. Then go ahead to measure the pleats. Make sure that it is exactly the same width with the waist measurement of the bodice that we have measured initially. You can go ahead and push it in more if it is more than the waist measurement you're working with. Then get the bodice and then pin them together. So assuming you are top stitching on the bodice, you can just mark half inch here and start pinning them down. Start pinning the down parts to the upper bodice down. Then after that, you top stitch on it. But I'm going to join mine together. So I'll flip it to the wrong side and pin them together. Like so. I'll start from the middle point. Pin them together. I'm not pinning with the lining. I'm pinning the main fabric now to the down parts. So you pin. Then I'm going to join them together using the 1/2 inch measurement that I added. Join carefully with the 1/2 inch that you have added. When you get to the midpoint, you have to flip the fabric to the other side to continue your joining until you get to the end. So the next thing to do is to close down the down part. You have to close the down part. So you can pin them together. And measure 7 inches from the waist. You can measure 6 depending on whatever you want, and then mark the zipper allowance and stitch it down. So this is what you have. So this is what you have. Hold the lining and the main fabric together. Make sure that the sides align because you're going to stitch them together like so. You stitch them together. You can go ahead and pin them down before stitching to make sure that it is smooth and neat while stitching, right? So after stitching them together, this is what you're going to have. You can go ahead and weave it. Voila, our dress is pretty on the mannequin. I've gone ahead to cut the bow tie. Biggest one is 14 by 10. The medium one is 7.5 by 12, and the smallest one 10.5 by 6. You can use any measurement of your choice. You must not use this exact measurement. Then for the smaller bow ties, I've also gone ahead to cut them. You can cut as many pieces as you want. Then you need to also cut out a long pieces that is measured 3 by 5 and a smaller one that is measured 1.5 by 12 inches depending on the number of smaller pieces that you are working with. Then we'll go ahead and start running stitch on them so that we can turn them like so. The bigger pieces will be for the big bow tie, while the small pieces will be for the small bow ties. Also go ahead to stitch round the bow ties like so, because we are going to turn them over to the right side. As you are stitching, leave out a space at the middle point of the bow tie so that you can turn your bow tie from that point, maybe about 1 inch space. Then go ahead and also stitch the smaller ones as you have done for the big ones. Leave out a space in between where you will turn them from. Carefully flip the bow tie to the right side like so. You are turning it to the right side carefully. When you have done that, you need to also make sure that all the points are smooth. You need to smoothen out the points, the edges, all the edges of the bow tie. Go ahead and do the same thing for the smaller ones. Turn it over to the right side and smoothen it out. Once you are done, you have to give it a good press. Go to your ironing table and press it down so smoothly so that it can lay flat and neat. Then to pleat the bow tie, you need to mark the middle point of the bow tie and pleat at that middle point. Carefully pleat it like so. You can actually use thread and needle, hand needle, to do the pleats if you want to. Then the next thing to do is to use that tiny pieces that you have cut, torn and ironed, to hold the bow tie together like so. You need to hold it firmly so that it can be finer. Then after sewing it down, you need to turn the rough side inside. That rough side, you need to put it in like so. You flip it to the other side so that the wrong side will not be showing. Then make sure that you smoothen it out so that the bow tie can form very well. So that is how you're going to form the rest of the bow ties. Do the pleats, hold it down with the pieces that you have torn and ironed, and stitch them like so, and flip to the other side to hide the rough side, and also go ahead to smoothen it out like so. Then for the big bow tie, you just have to combine the three sizes together after pleating and hold them down just as we have done for the smaller bow ties. So you can go ahead and fix the bow tie at the middle. You can fix it anywhere you want to fix it. So go ahead and fix the smaller ones as well as you desire. You can go ahead and pack them down with needle and thread. Then carefully trim out the excesses before going ahead to hem your dress. Because our dress is basque dress, so the lengths are not equal. So go ahead and make them even. You have to carefully do this to avoid having an uneven length. So as you are trimming, you watch what you are doing so that you don't go and trim out what you shouldn't trim out. So after that, you can go ahead and hem your dress. Yippee! Our dress is ready. Is this something you want to give a try? Give me a like if so, and don't forget to click on the subscribe button, turn on your notification so you don't miss any tutorial. You can also share to your friends on Facebook and WhatsApp so they can also benefit from this. See you in the next video. Bye!